Imagine standing in a crowded square in 1535 Munster, Germany, and hearing a woman's screams echoing from the church tower above you. You look up and see her body suspended in the air, an iron hook piercing straight through her collarbone. And you know she'll be hanging there for days. On the first day, her screams are so loud they can be heard across the entire city. By day 3, she's still screaming. By day 5, her voice has been reduced to a whisper. On day 8, she finally dies. This wasn't some secret dungeon torture or battlefield atrocity. This was legal. This was documented. This was used across 7 European countries for over 600 years. And it appeared in official law books, required government licenses to perform, and left behind thousands of pages of documentation in state archives that still exist today. Before we go any further, I need to tell you something that's going to sound impossible. There were actually 3 different types of executioner's hooks used throughout medieval and early modern Europe, and Hollywood has never shown any of them correctly. The throat hook, the rib hook, and the suspension hook each had a specific legal purpose, a specific technique, and a specific type of victim they were reserved for. Professional executioners who used these devices had a nickname that's been lost to popular history. They called themselves the Whisperers. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. One execution by hook was so brutal that a queen who witnessed it banned the practice immediately across her entire empire. The last woman to die by executioner's hook wasn't in medieval times. She died in 1866. And when news of her death spread, it sparked international outrage in less than 48 hours. And in 2019, 3 executioners' hooks were stolen from a German museum in a sophisticated nighttime heist. They were never recovered, and the disturbing theory about who took them and why is going to stay with you long after this video ends. If you want to know what happened to those stolen hooks and the underground market they supposedly entered, make sure you're subscribed because we're investigating that story next month. Let's talk about what medieval justice actually was, because what you think you know is probably wrong. Medieval punishment wasn't random chaos or the result of bloodthirsty mobs. It was a business, and it was highly regulated. In 1276 in Nuremberg, Germany, a woman named Anna Hansen was sentenced to 4 hours on the throat hook for theft. That sentence wasn't handed down by an angry mob. It came from a court, was written into official records, and was carried out by a licensed professional who had apprenticed for years to learn his trade. Starting in the 13th century, European courts began systematically moving torture from the battlefield into the courtroom, and they created an entire classification system for punishments. The executioner's hook fell into a category called intermediate punishment, which meant it sat somewhere between whipping and execution. These weren't crude pieces of metal hammered together by blacksmiths. The hooks were sophisticated instruments with 4 prongs curved at precise angles, and the executioners who wielded them were licensed professionals who studied human anatomy the way surgeons do today. Every single use of a hook required paperwork. The crime, the sentence, the duration, and the outcome all had to be documented, and those documents still exist in German archives. There were 3 types: the throat hook, the rib hook, and the suspension hook, and each had a specific legal purpose that was written into law. The throat hook was the most common, and here's how it actually worked. Picture a woman convicted of theft standing on a wooden platform in a town square. The executioner holds a device with 4 curved iron prongs, each about 3 inches long. A crowd has gathered because this is entertainment, and people have paid between 1 and 3 pennies for admission. The executioner positions the hook beneath the woman's jaw, angled upward. In one practiced motion, He drives the prongs up through the soft tissue under the tongue and through the floor of the mouth. The prongs pierce upward and lock in place behind the jawbone. Then the woman is raised onto her tiptoes and left there for 4 to 6 hours. The hook doesn't kill quickly because it's not designed to. It compresses the airway just enough that breathing is possible, but requires conscious effort. The victim can't swallow, so saliva pools in the mouth, mixing with blood. And here's the crucial part. The victim remains fully conscious the entire time. We know exactly how this worked because we have the diary of Franz Schmidt, a Nuremberg executioner who worked from 1573 to 1617. He logged 361 executions, and 345 of them involved hooks. Schmidt documented 3 different degrees of insertion: shallow for warning, medium for punishment, and deep for preparation before execution. But there's a detail Schmidt recorded that was deliberately suppressed in later historical accounts. The executioners heated the hooks until they were red hot before insertion. The heat cauterized the blood vessels instantly, preventing the victim from bleeding to death quickly and prolonging the suffering for hours. The commercial aspect of this was staggering. Vendors walked through crowds selling printed programs that listed the crimes, the names of the condemned, and the scheduled duration of their punishment. Children under 12 got in free because this was considered moral education, and parents specifically brought their daughters to watch other women suffer as a lesson about consequences. Now we get to the name. The Whisperer. After hours on the throat hook, the victim's vocal cords were so damaged they could only whisper. Guards would lean in close during those final moments to hear confessions or last words to family members. Schmidt recorded one woman who whispered for 47 minutes before she died, and her last words were documented. It teaches nothing. The rib hook was different, and it was worse. During the witch trials in Bamberg, Germany, a woman named Anna Hansen was accused of causing crop failure through witchcraft. The evidence against her was that she'd been seen talking to herself near the fields. She was sentenced to death by rib hook, which was longer and sharper than the throat hook. The victim was forced face down on a wooden frame, and the executioner inserted the hook between the ribs, below the shoulder blade. The technique required sliding it between the 4th and 5th ribs at an upward angle into the chest cavity. Executioners trained for years to perfect this because hitting the lung would cause death too quickly, and that defeated the purpose. The hook was positioned so it lodged against the spine. Then the victim was hung face down with their entire body weight suspended from that single point. Every breath caused the hook to shift. Every inhalation separated the ribs from the spine. Death took between 2 and 6 hours, caused by internal bleeding, slow suffocation, and eventual shock. The victim remained conscious for the first several hours. Between 1626 and 1631, during the Bamberg witch trials, over 400 people were executed, and 63% of them, 252 women, died by rib hook. We have testimony from one woman whose torture was stopped when her accuser recanted. She described the sensation as "my ribs peeled away from my spine like fruit skin pulled from the flesh beneath." Medical examiners in the 20th century studied these historical accounts and confirmed that victims would have remained conscious for most of the ordeal because the hook avoided major arteries. Blood loss was slow, and the brain received enough oxygen to experience everything. In 1755, Maria Theresa of Austria, one of the most powerful rulers in Europe, attended a rib hook execution to understand the justice system she had inherited. She brought her personal physician and her confessor. She watched for 6 hours from beginning to end. Her diary entry from that night reads, "I have seen hell's machinery. God forgive us." Within 1 week, she banned the rib hook in all Habsburg territories. which included modern-day Austria, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and parts of Italy and Poland. Her decree cited unconscionable cruelty, unbefitting Christian mercy, but she kept the throat hook legal until 1776. And in Protestant states, the rib hook remained legal. It was used 147 more documented times between 1755 and 1847, primarily on women accused of adultery, heresy, or infanticide. The suspension hook is the one that still haunts Germany today. If you visit St. Lambert's Church in Munster, Germany, you can see 3 iron cages hanging from the tower right now. They've been there since 1536. Most tourists walk right past them without knowing what they represent. Those cages held the bodies of 3 Anabaptist rebels, including a woman named Horrified, one of the only women executed by suspension hook whose name survives in historical records. The Anabaptists had taken over Munster and declared it the New Jerusalem, believing the end of the world was imminent. Horrified was one of the prophet's most devoted followers and had recruited dozens of people to the cause. When Catholic and Protestant armies retook the city, she refused to recant. She was sentenced to the suspension hook and public display on the church tower. The suspension hook was inserted either through the shoulder above the collarbone or through the hip bone, and then the victim was hoisted up the side of the building, usually the tallest church tower in the city, as a warning that could be seen for days. Horrified hung for 8 days. We have letters from witnesses, church officials, merchants, and soldiers who documented what they saw. By day 3, she was still shouting religious prophecies. By day 5, she could barely whisper. On day 8, she stopped moving, but her body remained suspended for an additional 6 weeks, decomposing in full view as a warning visible from miles away. When they finally brought her down, they placed her body in an iron cage, and her bones were displayed on that tower for more than 50 years. Protestant leaders across Europe used Horrified's execution as propaganda. Pamphlets circulated showing her suffering, labeled as Catholic cruelty, and her death became a flashpoint that intensified the religious wars tearing Europe apart. Historians of the 30 Years' War, which killed 8 million people, cite her execution as one of the direct provocations. The medical legacy of the executioner's hook is something nobody talks about. Modern surgical retractors evolved directly from executioner's hook designs. A German surgical textbook from 1847 explicitly labeled them modified suspension instruments. The same technology used on Horrified now saves lives in operating rooms worldwide. The accumulated anatomical knowledge of executioners became the foundation of modern anatomy, and Franz Schmidt's diary, documenting 345 hook executions, was used as a medical reference in German universities until 1903. Now here's something that's going to shock you. The last woman to face an executioner's hook wasn't executed in medieval Europe. It happened in Philadelphia in 1866, and it was photographed. The photograph was suppressed for 90 years, and when it was finally released in 1956, it reignited national debates about capital punishment. On June 8, 1866, at Philadelphia County Prison, Bridget Deegan, a 34-year-old Irish immigrant woman, was executed. She'd been convicted of murdering her employer's family during a robbery. Pennsylvania law at the time allowed the warden to select the method of execution, and he chose an antique German device that had been imported as a historical curiosity. More than 3,000 people gathered outside the prison walls. Unlike medieval executions, this one happened in a prison courtyard, not a public square. Reporters from 12 newspapers were present, and for the first time in history, an execution was photographed. Bridget Deegan had been in America for 6 years working as a housemaid. Historians still debate whether she actually committed the murders she was convicted of. The executioner had never used a hook before and had only read German execution manuals. On the first attempt, the hook missed the proper insertion point, and Bridget collapsed, conscious and screaming. On the second attempt, the executioner repositioned and pulled harder. The hook caught, but one prong broke off, causing heavy bleeding. 2 hours passed before he finally got it right. The crowd outside could hear her screaming. She hung for 40 minutes before she died. The Philadelphia Inquirer called it a mechanical failure of medieval barbarism in the modern age. The Evening Bulletin ran a front-page editorial. "We have proven ourselves more savage than our ancestors." Public outrage exploded nationwide. Post-Civil War women's rights groups seized on the case as evidence of institutional cruelty toward women. Within 48 hours, Pennsylvania banned all non-hanging executions. In 1868, the Treaty of Geneva established international laws of warfare, and it specifically cited Bridget Deegan's execution in its prohibition of archaic torture executions. Legal scholars in 7 countries referenced her case when drafting capital punishment laws. One woman's botched, photographed, publicized death ended 600 years of legal hook usage worldwide. In 2003, the actual hook used to kill Bridget Deegan appeared at a private auction in Boston. It sold for $12,000 to an anonymous buyer. Museums refused to bid. The Smithsonian issued a statement calling it too disturbing for educational value. Then, in 2019, 3 executioners' hooks were stolen from the Medieval Crime Museum in Rothenburg, Germany. In a sophisticated nighttime break-in, the thieves bypassed modern security systems, took only the hooks, and left everything else untouched. The hooks have never been recovered. Police theory suggests a specialized occult collector. Reports claim the hooks were listed on the dark web for $50,000 each. There's a disturbing underground market for devices that were specifically used to kill humans. Franz Schmidt's final diary entry, written after 44 years and 345 hook executions, reads, "The hook teaches nothing. It only satisfies rage." This wasn't some temporary madness or one society's aberration. For 600 years, this was law, science, and entertainment. For most of that time, it wasn't even controversial. It was just normal. In the last 20 years, 14 countries have abolished capital punishment entirely, citing lessons from historical barbarity. The executioner's hook appears in UN human rights training modules as case study number 4 under Why Documentation Matters. We have Schmidt's diary, court records, witness accounts, Maria Theresa's diary, and newspapers covering Bridget Deegan. The documentation prevents us from forgetting, sanitizing, or pretending. It forces us to confront what this actually was. Those cages still hang on the church tower in Munster. Germany could take them down, and the debate comes up repeatedly, but they keep them there deliberately. They force the city and the country to look up every day and remember, the hooks are gone, the laws have changed, but the question remains, what does it say about humans that we designed this, used it for 600 years, made it legal, and brought children to watch? I want to know what you think. Should museums display the surviving hooks to force people to confront the physical evidence of what humans are capable of? Or does displaying them honor the suffering and turn it into a spectacle all over again? Drop your answer in the comments because I genuinely don't know the right answer. Next week, we're investigating the Iron Maiden, that famous spike-filled torture device. because there's evidence it might never have actually been used. Everything we think we know about it might be a Victorian-era fabrication. And what we found in German archives is going to completely upend the standard history. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.